I'm a paranormal investigator for the US government. My agency is getting annoyed. Part 2. Blood Trees. Written by Cryptid-Echo. Let me start this off by saying one thing. I effing hate blood trees. Look, there are 100,000 ways to die in this world. Over half of those are from cryptids. Half of that is pretty quick or relatively painless, and smaller still are the ones that make it hurt. Within this percentage, there are 2 ways of death that every one of you really needs to be aware of. 1. Mental break. This method isn't exclusive to eldritch beings, but they love it. The idea of yanking your mind and soul out of your body and driving you mad while inflicting pain is probably their favorite dish. You sit there for what feels like an eternity, getting your soul flayed while they show you images and scenes that no human was built to see. 2. Physical break. These are what I like to call digesters. An entity, human or not, who secures your body to something and just puts you through it. Peeling off your skin, bamboo under the fingernails, cutting off your eyelids, the works. These things typically have the ability to heal the damage that they cause so that they can inflict more pain without killing you. Blood trees, they can do both. Now, I don't know what asshole conjured these things up, but I hope their creation did some turnabout on them. Blood trees are hard to pin down. Not that there aren't a lot of them, they're everywhere relatively speaking. Every forest in the US and Canada has them. The young ones are more active, constantly needing food, and every once in a while you get some kind of cult that pops up around them. You know, with assholes wearing robes, chanting in a made-up language while they yeet some poor schmuck into the bowels of the tree. They typically feast on a live body for a few weeks, and then longer as they get older and learn how to make the meal last longer. The older ones are the ones you really have to worry about. One live body can sustain them for a few decades or so, which means you are typically being digested for the rest of your natural life. If they get more bodies, they store them for later. The ugly tree from the Johnny Depp version of Sleepy Hollow? Yeah, blood tree. Some can serve as gateways to a pain dimension or something, but those are actually really rare. So, blood trees possess the ability to not only digest you over time and keep you alive while doing so, but many of them can mess with your mind while doing it. So, you can see why I really hate them. The following investigation showcases 3 things. 1. I effing hate blood trees. 2. I hate other agencies. Suck it, FBI. 3. I try not to go on any investigation alone. Being alone means you're more vulnerable, and there is no help. So, on to the investigation. Agent Echo, arrival on scene at 0645, December 20, Redacted, Colorado. You'll realize pretty quick that I hate a lot of things. Dense forests, cults, springform pans, the FBI. 3 of these things came into play today. I found myself at the entrance to a state park, whose name I won't share for obvious reasons. For this one, I didn't have to blend in with the locals. There was no apartment or beat-to-crap vehicle to deal with. Nope, I made my way to Fort Carson and I yanked one of their range control trucks. Something with ground clearance and self-recovery options. I pulled the big vehicle into the gravel parking lot, which was freshly layered with snow. I can't tell you enough how effing beautiful this state is. Flocked trees, quiet wilderness, elk running everywhere, and in most cases, not a lot of people. Anyways, the small visitor center sat nestled in the foreground of a mountain range, an idyllic location for a lovely state park. It was a log cabin style, single story with large windows, dark stain, and a green tin roof. A set of glass double doors served as the entrance, with a small set of stairs leading up to it and a handicap ramp to the side. There were a few park ranger trucks sitting off to the side. The rest of the lot was empty save for a couple of mid-sized SUVs and a Subaru or two. After parking and shutting off the truck, I hopped out and checked for my gear. I was wearing a set of snow pants over my jeans and a matching parka with fur lining. Mittens covered my thin undergloves and I wore a black beanie. It was balls out cold and I don't really like being cold, but I did dress down enough so that I wouldn't get overheated while walking. My backpack held enough food and supplies for a few days of travel with a small axe hanging off to the side. I slung a 12 gauge over my shoulder and slid a .454 revolver with a 6-inch barrel into the holster at my hip. Why such a big revolver? A few reasons. First off, this is bear country. I don't give a damn about hibernation seasons. You don't want to go into bear country at any time without packing some iron. Second off, revolvers don't jam like a semi-auto will. Third, a .454 will put down a bear without much drama. Just go into a fight with a bear using a 9mm. I dare you. Bear attacks happen pretty quick, so you aren't going to be playing John Wick with a 500-pound bear that can move faster than you. Secure that I had all my crap, I walked up the snowy steps and into the visitor center. It was quiet. Not unsettlingly quiet, just that no one was having a really loud conversation. A tall, brawny man with sandy-colored hair made his way over to me. A park ranger by uniform, he opened his mouth to speak when I shoved a piece of paper in his face. He took a few moments to read it, then folded it and handed it back to me. "Well, that takes care of the first round of questions. I'm, fake name obviously, Ranger Sandover. Call me Mike." "Echo, nice to meet you," I said. "Echo?" The beginning of a look of amusement lit up on his face. "Is that a secret code name?" I wasn't about to explain the intricacies of agency policy or the need for official cover names to a park ranger. "Yes, Mike, it's a code name. Now F off." Instead, I looked up at him. He was probably a hair shorter than Shout was, but more muscular. "Yep, can we get to business, Mike?" He chuckled. "Sure thing." He turned and waved me along as he walked through the facility. "You with the FBI or something?" I bristled. Now, you may not know this, but I effing hate the FBI. "No, they do their own thing. I don't mess with them," I said, barely hiding my disgust. The walk through the facility was short. It took only a few seconds to reach the wooden door labeled as Ranger Office, and for Mike to throw it open and reveal the contents that were inside. It wasn't anything special. A medium-sized wooden desk, basic-ass industry catalog issue, sat in the middle. A computer screen from 20 years ago sat on the side, along with the nameplate of the supervisor to the area. James T. Celery. It should be pretty clear by now that all these names are fake. Anyway, Ranger Celery sat his portly ass in a swivel chair behind the desk. He was huge. Not huge like a UFC heavyweight. Huge as in he could probably wolf down an elk all by himself huge. His fat face had sweat on it from just sitting, and his hair had cleared out the top of his head, leaving a horseshoe of thin brown hair that traveled the circumference of his dome. To his side stood another ranger. That made up the three on duty right now. She was effing adorable. Black hair, bright blue eyes, and a hair taller than me and probably in better shape than Mike. That was about all she had going for her. Her name tag said Bristol. "Who's this new guy? Why are you bringing an armed civilian in here?" said Bristol. "Not a civilian. You remember the other day we got a call about an agent coming to take a look around? This is Agent Echo," Mike said. Bristol looked at me like she had just beaten her dog and killed her mom. Probably the same way that I look at FBI agents. And why do we need an agent? This is a state park. We don't need... This bitch was already getting on my nerves, so I cut her off. Are you the one in charge? If not, shut the F up. This crap is above your pay grade. I could hear shout now. Do you always start fights wherever you go? Sometimes I can't help it. This long doing the work I do, I don't have the time or patience for uppity peons. Bristol turned fully towards me and started forward. Immediately, I pulled the revolver free and thumbed the hammer back, pointing it at her body. Don't try it. I could put a new asshole in every inch of your body and still get away with it, I said. The room was tense. Mike's face was white. Obviously, the guy was an easygoing type who hadn't seen the more uncouth side of human nature. Celery, to his credit, remained calm, folding his hands together. All right, everyone calm down. Bristol, take a walk outside. Agent, please lower your weapon. I understand your role here, but let's have a bit of tact, he said. I nodded slowly and stepped to the side when Bristol passed, still glaring daggers at me, and closed the door. I ran the hammer forward and slid the revolver back into the holster. Please sit down, Celery said. I didn't. The search and rescue team is arriving soon. You can head out with them when the snow lifts, Celery said as he wiped the sweat from his brow with a handkerchief. I shook my head. I'm not a search and rescue. There is something else I'm after, and honestly, this is a courtesy that we told you that I'm coming. Sometimes people didn't understand that. For a few reasons, my objective isn't exactly the safety of human beings. Search and rescue handles that. My objective is the destruction of the cryptid emergence that I was assigned to. That and feelings can get you killed. It sucks, but that's the way it is. I just need someone who knows this area, I said. Well, Mike is still new, Celery said. SAR won't be here for a few hours, most likely. Meaning, the only experienced one I can send with you is Bristol. I sighed. Search and rescue might not be willing to hightail it right now. Not sure why search and rescue would be delaying at the moment, but I didn't have the luxury of waiting. Fine, I said after exhaling a calming breath. As a group, we walked out of the office. Celery pulled Bristol to the side while Mike and I hung back. Be careful. I shouldn't be saying this, but Bristol has a temper, Mike said in a whisper. Then don't. Thanks for the concern, though, but I'll be fine, I replied evenly. Celery and Bristol talked for a few minutes that went by way too slow. Once they were done, Bristol disappeared into the back for a few moments, then returned dressed for the weather, a lever-action rifle slung over her shoulder. I nodded. One that she returned. Then we walked out of the station and around to the back towards the looming line of flocked trees ahead that marked the true boundary to the park. We followed the snow-filled footsteps into the trees and started along a path that would have been easier to see if it were not for the 10 inches of snow covering the ground. Echo, did you make that up? Be some kind of organization for you to just use code names. Are you CIA? Bristol asked. At least she didn't say FBI. No. CIA handles issues outside of the continental US mostly. Espionage and things like that, I replied evenly. Our earlier tensions suppressed under a layer of professionalism. We walked for a while, the miles passed, and the time went with it. It was midday by the time either of us attempted a conversation again. So, what are we looking for? You said you weren't search and rescue, so what's the deal? She spoke after a few minutes. We were walking side by side in the pathway, and I pulled out a GPS with a preloaded set of coordinates on it. Honestly, I won't be sure until I see it, I said. Thump, thump. And hopefully it's nothing. Thump, thump, thump. I paused while Bristol walked forward. Alarm bells went off in my head. Something was coming. I sped up my walk until I closed in on the ranger, opening my mouth to speak. You act like it's just going to jump out at you. She had to say that. From the thick underbrush, a bear barreled out. Large, fast, and angry, it shouldered me to the side, having locked in on Bristol as its target. My shotgun fell to the side and I went backwards onto my back. Bristol screamed out as the bear slammed her to the ground, massive paws raising and slamming downward to try and rip her limb from limb. If she hadn't gotten her rifle long ways between herself and the bear, she really would have been done for. As I came to my feet, the bear caught her left shoulder in its mouth, grabbing and dragging her side to side, shaking her violently. I ran up with the .454 in hand. I got up close so I wouldn't risk hitting her, and I fired. Once, twice. The bear went down in a heap, its head half gone. I took Bristol's rifle and looped the sling around the bear's neck and pulled back hard, giving the ranger a bit of room to shimmy out from under it. Blood was pooled underneath her shoulder and she was breathing hard, eyes wet as the realization of what had happened just set in. I dropped to her side and pulled her coat open, expecting to find a tattered mass of flesh where her torso had been. Instead, I found claws. Not marks, but actual claws. The claws from the bear's paws had broken off the second they split the skin. Alright, you look surprisingly good, I said. Bewildered was a good word for it. Her nervous chuckle split the air. A few drops of blood pooled from under her uniform shirt, but her shoulder was a little worse off. The teeth had remained intact for a bit longer and had cut a few nice gouges into the flesh. I pulled a medkit out of her bag and I set to work. How am I not… What the… She spoke between breaths. She looked up at my face and shot me a peculiar stare. You know what happened. Tell me. That thing should have ripped my guts out. What's going on? I finished the bandage on her shoulder and sighed. Reaching out, I pulled the claws from her chest and lifted one up, squeezing it between my fingers. It snapped quickly and fell to pieces afterwards. It was already dead, I told her. Come again? She spoke incredulously. Already dead. I think I know why, but I really wish I didn't. I leaned down and removed Bristol's knife from the sheath under her belt. Before she could protest, I lifted up the arm of the bear to expose its underbelly better. Then I pushed the knife in. Pulling to the side, the skin split open with a sick pop and disgorged its insides all over the snow. Well, the entrails at least. Huge clots of blood remained attached to the different organs, and I reached a gloved hand down into its body, searching around for a moment. Okay, that is disgusting. What in God's name are you doing? She said. I didn't speak for a moment. Then I pulled my hand free, holding up a horrid-looking object. It looked like a seed with many small roots coming off of it, covered in flesh. Like a tumor growing, the roots wriggled randomly, trying to find purchase in something. Oh my God. Bristol went pale. Most people did when they first saw one of these things. Human minds can't fully process some things very well. It's a blood tree, damn it. I stuck the tip of the knife into the seed and pulled it free. Copious amounts of fresh blood spewed from the opening, more than the palm-sized thing should have been able to hold. I tossed it back into the bear. It's been using the bear to travel. Animals have an instinct that is hard to override, especially with predatory animals. A few more days and the seed could have controlled it. Okay, I'm gonna need you to explain this in a bit more detail. Why isn't the bear hibernating? Why did it not kill me? How is it dead? And what the F did you just pull out of it? Bristol asked. I sighed softly. Look, the bear's head, where I shot it. Look where I cut it. See any blood that didn't come from the seed? No, because it's already coagulated. The bear was mostly dead. It attacked you because the seed trying to control it made it lose its mind. The seed I pulled out is from a blood tree. They survive off of fresh bodies. There is a whole book I could tell you, but just realize that they are bad effing news. And it seems that you have one in your little park. And probably with a cult around it too. A cult? Like guys in black robes chanting shit? Bristol asked. Yep, exactly. Blood trees don't usually infect animals. Their instinct makes it hard to separate an animal from its natural area to spread, which means it was probably put there by someone. Ergo, you have a blood tree cult. Here, help me with this, I said. Finding it next to a bottle of tequila and a rag, I pulled a big bottle of lighter fluid from my bag and tossed Bristol the long torch. She fumbled with it, but caught it. I began dousing the bear carcass with the lighter fluid. I'm not sure how many seeds are in this thing, so the best bet is to burn it, I said. Once I finished, I swapped the lighter fluid with the torch and set the bear alight. Bristol was squeezing a bit more fluid on there for good measure. So, what now? Bristol asked softly, nibbling her lip. We find the tree, burn it, and kill the cultist, I said. She didn't respond. We took a few minutes to rest and eat and regain some energy. I checked her bandages, but the wounds were surprisingly superficial. Bristol floated the idea of making camp, but I shook my head. This is not a place that we want to camp. If we're going to find it and live, then we have to find it soon. It knows its seeds just died. After securing all of our gear and finding her rifle and my shotgun, we continued our walk in the direction the bear had come from, with me reloading the .454 on the way. A half hour went by before she spoke again. Echo. Far contrasting her earlier bravado at our first meeting, her voice was meek, girlish, scared. Yeah, I said. What is going to happen to me? She asked. Damn, she had good instincts too. It depends. If the seeds had enough control to sprout on their own, then you'll probably be infected. Your shoulder will ache more, get red hot, and you'll see small roots in the wound. They'll slowly move through your body until they invade your brain, and then they'll kill you while retaining control of your body. If not, then after a few weeks of recovery, you'll be fine. I don't sugarcoat things. It never pays to, really. Bad things happen, and they happen whether we like it or not. She let out a small sob. It was too early to tell if she had been infected, though. What happens then? You burn me too? She asked. After I put a bullet in your head, yeah. Mostly so you won't feel it. But remember, it's too early to tell, though. You might be all right. That wasn't a lie, at least. We walked further and deeper into the woods. The sun had set, leaving us in the darkness, but the moon provided enough light that it reflected off the snow and made walking easier. I didn't want to use a light. We already made enough noise walking to risk fully giving ourselves away visually. We stalked silently up the ridge, where the light played random shadow games over the top and on the other side. I slid down to my knees in the snow, and Bristol followed suit. Then we crawled the rest of the way up. Looking up, there was a small clearing. A fire loomed in front of a large, gnarled tree that bled profusely from many different openings. 4 figures in hooded cloaks stood there. They were evenly spaced, but far enough from the tree to stay out of the range of its flailing limbs and roots. The scene was grotesque, and I heard Bristol dry heave into her jacket to muffle the sound. I've been around a few of them, and I still have to fight the nausea from overwhelming me. The things were bad news on every level. A sickening entity that could have an effect on someone just based on proximity. I watched for a few minutes just to get the nausea under control, and hopefully Bristol could do the same. I looked over to her, laying just a few feet from me. "You all right?" I asked. Yeah, I think," she responded. "Make sure that you are. This is gonna happen fast." I peeked over the rise we lay upon, noticing that we were about 2 meters above the clearing. It wasn't much of an elevated position, but enough to give us a slight edge. I searched in my bag for the bottle of tequila. Shame to use it on a blood tree, but we would have to get another bottle later. I unscrewed the cap and stuffed a rag into it, then put the cap back on. Okay, we hopped down the hill, killed the cultist, and burned the tree. Wait. We can't just kill them. The law doesn't work like that, Echo," Bristol said. "Are you serious? Do you know what these people will do to you if they—" My words were stopped short by the sound of heavy footsteps. I looked back in time to see an athletic man barreling towards us, murder in his eyes with a touch of fanaticism. I saw the faint traces of a ranger uniform before a long leg pushed forward in a vicious kick to my side. The amount of power in the kick was absolutely ridiculous. My body lifted off the snow-covered ground, and with a scream of pain, I went over the side and down the 2-meter drop to the floor below. Trying to catch my breath, I pushed shakily to my knees, my shotgun laying to the side a few feet away. A quick lift of my head showed me that 3 robed figures were coming at an alarming pace. Pulling the revolver free, I lifted it, and in a quick motion, I fired. One cultist dropped when a .454 blew his spine out of his back. My reaction was a little slow due to the fall, though. I managed to squeeze one more shot off that annihilated the left thigh of the second, causing the woman's screams to echo out into the wilderness. The third had reached me. Dropping his full weight on top of me, he slapped the .454 out of my grasp and closed around my neck with 2 beefy hands, squeezing tight and cutting off my air supply instantly. I thrashed, moving and squirming and trying to get away. Another shot rang out in the forest, followed by a thud off in the distance. I couldn't hear much, my ears were clogged and my vision was fading. He was too strong at this point and had too much leverage. I guess this was my time. A thunderclap startled both of us. The man stiffened and fell to the side like he had gotten hit by a sledgehammer, which he might as well have. Bristol pulled herself forward, ragged breaths shooting steam into the cold night air. Her rifle fell down as she kneeled next to me and pulled me up into a sitting position. Leaning on each other, we climbed to our feet and I grabbed the .454. She held the bottle of tequila up for me to see and didn't even need to say anything. I pulled out the torch and lit the rag, and Bristol reared back like she was throwing a grenade. Her aim was perfect. The Molotov sailed through the air and blew against the side of the tree. Fire spread all along the trunk. Screeches from the tree, a cacophony of all its still living victims, provided a macabre chorus as its death cry. The tree would burn for quite a while, most likely. "Come on, let's get out of here," I said. She didn't respond. Tucked under my shoulder, her breathing was ragged, rough, her body hot against mine. We tried to walk, but she held fast. Remember what you said earlier? About the seeds?" she said. She spoke softly, almost calm, like she had accepted this. I laid her against the ridge and kneeled in front of her, reaching out to push her parka aside and lift her bandages. Small roots sprouted from the wound, which was festering and an angry red. I swore. "Yeah, this sucks," she said. I stood there, cursing internally. She had the instinct to be a part of our agency. That, and she was a fighter. A survivor. A decent effing person, actually. I pulled the revolver and I aimed it at her. "I really wish I didn't have to do this," I said. "I know." She stared up at me, scared, but knowing that this was going to have to happen. "You aren't going to look away?" she asked. "I never do. Just don't tell me when you're gonna..." I pulled the trigger. My face didn't change, but I just stood there, breathing. Tears made their way down my cheeks, and I pulled a cigarette free and lit it. After the tree had fully burned, I had to do the same to Bristol, as it was the only way to ensure the destruction of the seeds. I climbed the rise again to see Mike Sandover's body lifeless with a giant hole in his head. I burned his body too, and that of the cultist as well. Then I began the long trip back to the ranger's station. I called Brain, and by the time I was done with the report, I was back at the ranger's station. The parking lot was empty. Celery was gone. I put out a mark on him, more on that later, and I jumped in the truck. It was time to find a bar and get wasted at. End of transcription. Well, there's another one. I'll let you guys know what happened to Celery next time, but until then, stay out of the effing woods.